Today we are going to find and interpret unit rates in tables, graphs, and word problems. We'll go over the big idea of the lesson and cover some key vocabulary terms, and then we're going to be working in our workbooks. If you'd like a copy, check out the link in the comments below. In our workbooks, we're going to go over 4 different types of problems. First, we'll go over just finding how to find the unit rate using division. Then we'll look at using the unit rate in tables, and then we'll do tables and graphs for the unit rate, and we'll end by doing some word problems together. So let's get into the big idea. So what's the big idea anyway? So a rate is a ratio. It compares two quantities, and we could think of like dollars to apples. A unit rate tells us that comparison per one. So how much does one apple cost? So you can find unit rate by dividing. Unit rate can help us to find better deals, compare speeds, or understand how quickly or efficiently something happens. So it's really important in real life application. If we think of this example, if I had 10 notebooks that cost $25, the unit rate, I could have $25 divided by the 10 notebooks would give me the price per one notebook, which would be $2.50. If we think of speed would be an example, right? So price is a huge unit rate that we see all over the place. Speed would be like if I was traveling 240 miles in 4 hours, my unit rate is I want to know how far do I travel per 1 hour. So 240 miles divided by 4 hours would give us our unit rate, and 240 divided by 4 would be 60. So our unit rate would mean that we would be traveling 60 miles an hour. Let's review our vocabulary terms for today. So we're going to start off with rate. Now, rate is a comparison of two quantities with different units. For example, miles and hours would be two different types of units. And all rates are ratios, right? We're building our knowledge about understanding rates and unit rates from first understanding ratios, and we know that a ratio is comparison between two quantities or two amounts. What's different between a rate and a ratio is that rates include two different units. So all rates are ratios, but not all ratios are rates per se. So for example, a ratio could still be marbles to marbles, a comparison within the same unit. So that distinguisher for a rate is that it's a comparison with two different units. So remember, learning is always about making connections. And if we start with what we know about ratios, the next step is we know ratios are a comparison of two different amounts. The next step, we extend that to understanding rate, which is a comparison between two amounts, but with different units. And then the next step from a rate is a unit rate, which is still a comparison between two different units, but the second unit or the denominator always represents one per one. So for example, if I had $3 per one apple would be the cost of an apple, or 60 miles per 1 hour. So it's always per one unit, and that's the distinguisher of a unit rate compared to a rate. Lastly, we have a proportional relationship, and this is a relationship that compares two quantities where the ratio is constant. So we know that a ratio compares two quantities, and a proportion shows us that those two ratios are equivalent, that they represent the same relationship. So a ratio is like a snapshot that shows us a two-number comparison. I like to think of rice and water, right? If I'm cooking rice, I need 1 cup of rice. For every cup of rice, I need 2 cups of water. That's the ratio, right? And then a proportion shows two different snapshots. It shows that match. So proportional to the 1 to 2 would be if I was cooking for a dinner party and I needed 5 cups of rice, then I would need 10 cups of water. So it would be proportional in that relationship. Now that we're done going over our vocabulary terms, let's get into some practice. So we're looking to find the unit rate, and we're using division to do so. So my first problem here is I have 12 apples for $6. So I'm looking to know how many apples would I get per one for $1. So if I have 12 apples for $6, and remember, rates mean we're comparing two different units. So the two different units are apples and dollars. And then I set this up as a ratio 12 to 6, which is a fraction, and all fractions are division problems. So 12 divided by 6 equals 2, which means I'm going to get 2 apples for every dollar that I spend. Okay, now we're going to use the table to help us find the unit rate. So we have a two-part question here. What is the unit rate? And then how many hours would it take to earn $225? So let's start with, we know that we're comparing hours to dollars. And if I make $30 in 2 hours, okay, so we're comparing dollars to hours. Those are my two units. And then remember, I am going to divide. And here I'm dividing by 2 because I want to know how much money would I earn per 1 hour in 1 hour of time per 1 unit. So 30 divided by 2 equals 15, which means I'm going to make $15 an hour. Now when we fill in tables, what's great about tables, it can help us find the unit rate. Because we can use patterns as we go looking at the numbers and information that they give us. So here I know that if I added another hour onto this for 3 hours, I would add $15, which would give me $45 in 3. And then I add another hour to that and I can check my work. 45 plus 15 equals 60. So I can see that my unit rate is correct. Okay, we could also use the pattern that we see here in the table to fill in our missing values, because we see the increase of $30 from 30 to 60, and from 2 to 4 is an increase of 2, and that increase of 2 is consistent. So I know I could just add 30 for every 2 hours, which again lines up with the $15 per 1 hour. And so in 6 hours, that means I would earn $90. In 8 hours, I would earn $120. And then in 10 hours, I would earn $150. Okay, and the question is asking, if I earn $225, how many hours would that take? And so here we can simply set up 225 divided by, I know that I earn $15 an hour. So if I do the amount of money I make about the divided by the amount of money I know I get per hour, I can figure out how many hours that would be. And so 225 divided by 15 equals 15. So it would equal 15 hours. It would take me 15 hours to earn $225. Another way is you could have just kept your table going until you got to 15, and we'd get the same answer, 15 hours to earn $225. Look at our graph. We're going to complete the table, find the unit rate, and then determine how many fences can be painted in 5 hours. And our table here, we have the hours from 1 to 5. Okay, so first we need to figure out what is the unit rate, and we're going to analyze this graph here. So we notice it is painting fences, and we are comparing hours on our x-axis, the amount of time it takes to paint a fence, and then y is the number of fences that are painted within that time. So we're going to start here at our first point on our graph, and we can see that in 1 hour I would paint 1, 2, 3 fences. Okay, let's identify all 3 of these points. So the first one is that in 1 hour it would be 3 fences, and that's what we're going to put in our table. Then next, in 1, 2 hours, we would paint 3, 4, 5, 6 fences. Oops, 6 fences. So in 2 hours, I would have 6 fences. And then in 3 hours, 6, 7, 8, 9. In 3 hours, I would paint 9 fences. So we can see our unit rate. Whenever we see 1 in our x-axis, that's telling us per 1 how many fences painted per 1 hour. So that's our unit rate. Our unit rate is 3 fences an hour. And so we see that each time the hour increases, we're adding 3. Okay, and so for 4 hours, I know that that would be 12 because I would add 3 again. And then for 5 hours, it would be 15. And that answers the last part of our question. How many fences would be painted in 5 hours? 15 fences would be painted in 5 hours at a rate of 3 fences per hour. So our unit rate is 3 fences per hour, and in 5 hours we could paint 15 fences. Real quick, so we're finding the unit rate for each problem. Let's start with number 2, it's a little easier. Race time. Olivia runs 1,200 meters in 5 minutes, so I want to know how many meters per minute. Okay, the question kind of helps you determine how you want to line up your comparison. It's meters per minute. That helps you determine which number comes first, right? So 1,200 meters divided by 5 minutes. And so I'm simply going to set that up and divide. 5 goes into 12 2 times. 5 goes into 20 4 times. So it would be 240 meters a minute would be my answer. We covered a lot today. Hopefully you are walking away from today's lesson with a really good idea about what unit rate is and where you would see it in the real world. Remember that unit means per one. So since it's a rate, it's also a comparison. And really the building blocks for understanding unit rate are understanding ratios. So if you haven't already, check out these videos on ratios. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.